Hi, good day. Wayne Duvenage here from Outa. There's been a lot of talk recently, in the last few days, quite frankly, with regards to the escalating conflict in the Middle East and the war in Iran and how that is impacting on the oil price. And that's because 20% of the world's oil production that flows into the world markets has been stopped or is being slowed down and not allowed to travel and get through the Strait of Hormuz. So let me switch over to the slideshow and I will show you exactly what's happening and how this impacts on our petrol price. First of all, the Strait of Hormuz is here, and this is the Middle East, and the conflict area is over here. As you can see, it's a very narrow passageway for about 20% of the oil that comes from these oil-producing nations in this area to get through. And when that stops, and 20% of the world's oil stops flowing, it has a massive impact on the price of oil because the demand just shoots up as a result of a lower supply, quite frankly. So what does this mean? Well, let me start out by showing you this table here, or this pie chart. This chart shows you South Africa's petrol price in Gauteng for March this year, in 2026. It is set at 20.30 rand. And how it's made up is four main components, but there are 10 components that make up these three. These are the taxes, as we call them, taxes, levies, and fees. 31% of our petrol is made up by the fuel levy, road accident fund, and carbon tax. That's 6.37 rand. 7% of our petrol price in South Africa is made up of transport and storage costs, and the other 19% is made up of supply chain costs. This is the retail and wholesale margins and so forth. That's 3.82 rand. These collectively, these three components cost South Africans 11.64 rand before we pay for one drop of the petrol itself. And this is what we've been talking about at Outa for many years, how government has pushed up the taxes so far that before we even pay for anything in the petrol-related cost, we are paying 11.64 rand. So 57% of our petrol price is made up of these taxes. This is for the month of March, and this is based on Gauteng's 95 unleaded petrol price. The basic fuel price is 8.66 rand. And this component is largely impacted by the rand-dollar exchange rate, which for February, and that impacts the March fuel pricing, was averaging at 16 rand to the dollar. And the Brent crude price of oil was averaging at 69, just over $69 a barrel. So how does this play out? Let me show you what this does over time. If you go back to April 2008 and we plot the oil price and the rand exchange rate over time up until now, you'll see that in this purple area here, how the international oil price has dipped. I mean, we've had conflicts in the Middle East and the oil supply as far back as 2008, where Brent crude was well over $130 a barrel. It came rushing right down as the conflicts were averted, but it continued to climb. And there are various factors that impact on this, be it the OPEC nations, be it whether they're constraining supply. You'll recall the war in Libya was having an impact at around this time in 2011. And then the oil prices have come down, right down to around about $30 to $35 a barrel. In 2016, it went up again, and this is the lowest price we've seen in a long time, below $20 a barrel, an average for that month in the beginning of April, and that was due to April 2020. That was due to COVID and the world just shutting down, quite frankly. But it quickly grows again, and it's come down since 2022, right down to below 60 rand a barrel recently. So if you superimpose the rand exchange rate on top of that, you'll see that the rand exchange rate has been pretty low back in 2011, right down at the 6-7 rand marks per dollar, and how that has escalated and jumped around and fluctuated over time. And together, these two components have this impact on the basic fuel price component of our petrol. And you can see as the oil price is high, it starts to shoot our basic fuel price up. As it comes down, so it has a big impact there. And you can see over here where the rand went up, and as the oil price came down, we didn't get much of the benefit of that reduced oil price because the rand kept our basic fuel price high. Here's the worst it's ever been for us. Our basic fuel price was in the 17 rands per litre. It's around about August 2022, July, August 2022, and it dropped down. And this was because of a combination of high cost of the rand in the exchange rate as well as a high cost of oil in the international market. So you can see how the two give rise to the impact on that one component, just the one component, which currently is responsible for 43% of our petrol price at this stage. So let's show you what's happened. Well, average for February for the dollar price of petrol per barrel, or oil price per barrel, the Brent crude price, was $69, just over $69. That has shot up already. In fact, by the 9th of March, we're at $100 a barrel, 45% increase in the space of 1 week from here to here. That is quite excessive, and that's what's going to have a big impact on our petrol price. This is what's happened to the rand as well. It has also increased. The average for February was exactly 16 rand to the dollar, as is impacting on our petrol price. And we can see that that's already raised to 16 rand 84. So I'm going to do this scenario of the international fuel price, oil price, and how it impacts on our petrol price, based on our rand exchange rate hovering around about 17 is where I'm going to peg it for this exercise. So looking at this graph again, just pushing it to one side, and let's have a look at some of these scenarios. As of the 9th of March, if the Brent crude stays at $100 a barrel and our rand exchange rate is 17 or thereabouts, then what's going to happen is our basic fuel price is going to go up from 8 rand 66 to 13 rand 32. The tax portion is only going to go up by 21 cents. That's this 11 rand 64. That goes up to 11 rand 85. And the reason for that is that the Minister of Finance, as you know, a couple of weeks ago in his budget speech, said that the taxes on our oil, on our petrol price, are going to go up by 21 cents. And it's these taxes here, the fuel levy, the road accident fund, and the carbon tax, have all been increased slightly. So that's the reason why that pushes up. Now, these taxes are static. They don't move. They fluctuate. They move once a year. And I'll put some notes in at the end. These transport and supply chain costs go up generally between September and November, slightly inflation related, and these taxes go up in April. But for the main, they stay static. It is this component that is going to jump around, this basic fuel price estimate. So what you can expect if the rand hovers around 17 rand to the dollar, and if Brent crude stays where it is right now, around $100 a barrel. This is by the 9th of March, it's gone up to that, and we have an average of around $100 per barrel. Well, our price of petrol is going to go up by nearly 4 rand a litre. That's our reality. Unfortunately, we are in the hands of international geopolitical tensions that are pushing up the oil price. If that oil price goes to $120 a barrel, our petrol price is going to go close to 28 rand a litre. And that's going to hurt. And heaven forbid, and it's been close to $140 a barrel in the past, it goes to over 30 rand a litre. So it all depends on how prolonged this war is and how constrained the market does become, and the supply of oil that these various scenarios will play out. If we look back at our highest petrol price we've ever had in South Africa, it was 26 rand 75 per litre. That was in July 2022, when our exchange rate was at a reasonable price of $15, 15 rand to the dollar, 15 rand 76, and the oil price was then at $115 a barrel. And so you can see we were fortunate then because our cost of the taxes was R2 lower than what they are right now. And so these taxes that have increased year on year on year have started to impact heavily on the actual price of petrol in South Africa. And when you throw on top of that these scenarios playing out in the Middle East is where we get this volatility. So hope that explains, folks. There's some notes there. It just explains to you the SA fuel price has changed on the first Wednesday of every month. The basic fuel price, as I've explained, is impacted by the average rand exchange rate and the dollar price of Brent crude, and that the other taxes and other levies are static for about most of the year. I hope that explains how the petrol price is impacted by the exchange rate as well as the fluctuation in oil price on the international markets and what potential scenarios may play out in the coming months for South Africa's fuel price. Thank you very much.